So check this out. I've owned this keyboard for quite a while, and it still does stuff that continues to amaze me. It does some really clever things that aren't first apparent. Let's check it out. Hey guys, it's Steve from Featherlightstudio, and today I want to show you some of my favorite hacks for the YC series of keyboards from Yamaha. And these are just things that make the workflow and just operating the keyboard, especially live or in a worship team environment, so much more fun. And they're in the manual, but they're pretty buried. They're pretty hard to see, and some of them might surprise you. So let's dive in and find out a little bit more about some things that really make getting around and using the keyboard a lot more fun. In most of these examples, we're going to be using the YC's front panel exit button extensively. It's going to allow us to access what's known as the special operations list. So this exit button is actually double duty and has a lot of hidden features that aren't first immediately evident. It's got a lot more useful features as a quick button. So this first hack actually involves the effects engines on each one of the keys A and B engines. So we've got a basic clav sound here. And say we want to add a little bit of distortion to beef that up, so we engage the effects 2 engine for keys A, which is a clav. All right, so we've got that sound. It's got a little bit of a crunch to it. We've got some depth dialed in here. And say we've got that about where we want it to be. And so now we want to add a flanger to that sound. So we engage our first effects engine, which is our flange. And so now we got a flange in addition to our distortion cabinet effect on effect 2. However, if we hit and hold the exit button and then hit either one of the effects 1 or 2 engines, it'll swap the 2 effects engines' positions with each other. And this is important because now the flanger follows the distortion cabinet instead of precedes it. When it precedes it, it's actually in mono. But if we instantly swap it, now you can hear that it's actually in stereo. And this is a really quick way of auditioning effects chains without having to reprogram anything. All the effects are still the same on effects engine 2 and 1. They're just swapping locations simply by holding down the exit button and tapping either one of the effects buttons. And it'll keep these states as we switch them. So for example, if effects engine 2 is turned off and I hit exit and then hit any of the buttons, you'll notice once it's swapped up here, effects 1 is now disabled as well. So whichever state the effect is in, and we swap, those states are retained. So for this example, we have a patch that's got a clav on its A engine, and we've got a brass sound that's on the B engine. So right now, each one of those engines has their own effects choices. So the clav, for example, has a distortion on it, and it's got a flanger on it. And the order of that's important. So the distortion unit is first. That's the amplifier that's making our sound a lot beefier. And our flange follows that. So we want to retain all of those individual choices for our clav sound. On our engine B, we have a brass sound, and it has its own effects as well. It's got a compressor setting that helps take some of the top off, and it's got a chorus setting that we want to retain as well. So that gives it some space. So if we hold down our exit button and we hit the keys engine button, we can swap which engine produces which sound and all of its parameters intact simply by hitting the keys A and B engine. It simply swaps what's on A with B. And it keeps all of those decisions that we made for our effects completely intact. This is a really quick way of auditioning different configurations without having to build those sounds from scratch completely in our patches. This next trick is specific to the keys A and B engines. And this is great when you're programming sounds and you're looking for a specific sound. So on our B engine here, currently there's a guitar which we really don't need. We want to put something completely different on here. If we're in the others or the synth engine category where there's a lot of sounds, in those particular sound banks, there's just a ton of different sounds. What we're actually looking for is a brass sound. We want a brass sound on our keys B engine. If we press and hold the exit button, and then we arrow up On our rocker switch, it'll take us to the beginning of each one of the sound categories. So strings category, for example, guitar category, brass category. It's much faster to get there that way and then arrow up to the sound that you need. There's brass 1, brass 2, brass 3. All of those are instantly available. Instead of having to step through each one of them individually through the entire list of sounds, and there are a ton of them on board, it's super fast to simply grab the exit button and then step through all the categories. So for example, here's strings. Here's all of our string categories sounds. So by doing that, it's quick and easy to get up to a brass category and then simply step up to the sound that we need from there. This next trick deals specifically with the speaker amp section of the keyboard. So that's this area here. And we can choose what engine the effects here in this category are going to work on simply by choosing the selection switch, and it can either be organ, keys A, or keys B. So for example, we're going to set it to keys A, and we have kind of a tremolo Rhodes here that's going through a rotary speaker effect. Kind of a Beatlesque thing. And if we wanted to find out what rotary B sounds like, we simply hit it, and now we're using rotary B. So if we wanted to go back to rotary A, we'd have to step all the way through all of these other choices to get all the way back to A just to hear the difference between the two. However, if we hit the exit button and hold it, then these choices go backwards. Now we're actually going to rotary A, case, double, crunch, lead. If we release it, we're going forward. So by simply hitting the exit button and holding it, it allows us to go backwards. And if we release it, it allows us to go forward. This makes comparing sounds a lot faster. So for example, there's our A sound, and here's our B sound. And if we hit this, we can go back to our A sound much, much faster. This next trick deals with the YC keyboard's filter response. And there's a lot of ways to control it. Our filter knob itself is already set up to control whatever is set up for our filter and our envelope parameters. And so here we've got a mini moog sound. And our filter knob controls whatever's programmed to respond to that. But if we want to change on the fly the type of filter without having to go through the entire menu system, we can simply hit and hold down the exit button and then move the actual knob for the filter. And here we can change all of our filter choices right in the menu system without having to go through any of the deep menus to get there. You can certainly get there through the menu system, but simply hitting the exit button and grabbing the knob is a lot faster to grab this. So if we change completely our cutoff and resonance settings, we have a totally different kind of filter and cutoff, and our dial there is set to control those sounds. If we hit that and hold it and then change it back, we can go back to those settings and change it to a completely different filter again, and then have instant control of it. So that's a really fast way to get to our filter and cutoff settings without having to go all the way through the menu settings and then down through sound and then go to our key and A/B settings and then down to our filter settings. It's all right here by simply hitting the exit button and grabbing the dial. This next trick is specific just to the organ section by itself. If we choose an organ sound here, whatever shows up in the LCD window is the result of those drawbar positions. And that's what's been programmed into this patch. And the result of that shows up in two places, here in the LCD and then also here on our LED segments. You can see the position of the original drawbars that were used to create this patch. If we want to update this patch so that it reflects the current drawbar position, all we need to do is hold down the exit key and hit the left lower and upper button, organ button. And what it'll do is it'll update our current patch to the current drawbar sections as well. It shows both in the LCD and then it updates it here in our LED readout. That's also applicable to the lower organ as well. So if we look and over here we hit our lower and upper buttons and we show what's on our lower manual. Currently that's what's on our lower manual. If we wanted to update that to our current drawbar setting, we could do the same thing by hitting and holding the exit button. And then that just updates it to our current drawbar setting. So the advantage of this is that if you've got a current setting that you use all the time, or one that you use specifically for upper and lower positions, and you want to get to that really quickly, or maybe you've altered your patch so that you like the sound of that patch exactly the way it is. A quick way to update to what that is in your patch itself is simply hit and hold the exit button and then hit that, and it updates that, and you can save that, and you're good to go. In this trick, another one that's specific to just the organ section, the chorus and vibrato button over here steps through all of the choices of vibrato and chorus, and there's 3 of each, so that's quite a list to step through, especially if you're playing live. So we've got 3 vibrato choices and we have 3 chorus choices. If we don't want to have to step through the entire list of things each time, like we wanted to just go backwards one, we could hit and hold the exit button, and now we're going backwards instead of forwards. And this is handy, for example, if we find a vibrato or chorus setting that we like and we want to go back one, we simply hit the exit button and can go back. So normally the button goes forward. We are stepping through the vibrato choices 1, 2, 3 and the chorus choices 1, 2, 3. If we press and hold the exit button, now we're simply going backwards. 3, 2, 1 for choruses, 3, 2, 1 for vibrato choices. This next trick is great for MIDI programming, especially if you're working with different layers or splits or things like that, and you have the keyboard set up to a different velocity other than normal. So for example, if we have this set up to fixed velocity, and we're maybe using a string sound, and maybe we've used our filter or envelope settings to smooth that out a little bit. The first thing that we're going to want to do, especially if it's set for fixed velocity, is to adjust the volume of that output. And this is really easy to do here by simply hitting and holding the exit button and hitting touch. From here, we can adjust the output of our fixed velocity. So it sends out the same velocity, and this adjusts that up or down depending on wherever the dial is set. And it's always the same smooth velocity regardless of how lightly or how hard we play, because we've changed that velocity to be fixed. This next trick is great for when you're programming new sounds, especially new live sets, and you don't want to accidentally program over something you already have. So for example, this sound in our live set is a 78 Rhodes sound. But if we hit the exit button and hold it, and then hit the settings button, it'll automatically initialize our sound back to the standard Yamaha CFX in the same memory space without overriding the actual live set sound we previously had. And then from here, we could add things to it. For example, it's got a saw pad on there. Say if we wanted to change that, we could hit the exit button like in one of our previous examples, and we could step through a sound category, maybe some light strings. So we have a patch that we like and it sounds good to us. So now we could save that to another location. And if we go back to our original location, our original Rhodes is still there. We didn't overwrite it. So hitting the exit button and then holding down the settings button will initialize a sound and give us a starting point, a generic starting point that includes the Yamaha CFX Grand, but that could be any simply by stepping through these. And then we can create our own patch exactly where we need it with all the sounds and changes we want, save it to another location, and simply come back to that location that we were at, and our original live set sound is still there, safe and sound. One of the things that makes the Yamaha YC series of keyboards such powerful live performance keyboards is they don't switch off the signal flow of the previous patch when you switch patches. So for example, if we have this analog lead sound, and we change patches, it doesn't cut off the signal flow, so there's no real abrupt changes. But it's got a bit of a trick up its sleeve where that's concerned. If we go to Menu and down to Control Panel, and then we go to Advanced Settings and come down to Section Hold, and we enable that, let's back out of there. This is a really unique feature that allows us to hold any section on the keyboard's front panel here and apply it to all of the sounds we choose from that point forward. So for example, if we've got like a lead sound here, if we enable, say, our effects section here, and let's come up and add like a delay, we'll add a trailing delay that really goes for quite a while. So let's apply it to keys A, and we'll make it really, really long so we can hear it. Maybe not quite that long. All right. All right, so this section here, this effects section that we have, if we press and hold that button until it starts to blink, you'll notice this little LED here is blinking. It's going to hold this section no matter which sound we choose. So if we go to a completely different sound that doesn't have a delay on it, like for example this one, and then we go back to here, all the patches that we change to in our live set sounds will have this section's effects applied to them. To disable it, we simply hit it, and it disables that feature, and we're back to just our regular patches. So this is a really powerful feature, and it works for all the sections. All you have to do is simply press and hold each section, and it applies that section, in this case the reverb, to whatever choices we make over here in our live set. And one of the last things I want to show you is maybe one of the most valuable, and it's not really a trick since it actually has a knob on the panel itself. It's called panel lock, and this thing is maybe one of the most valuable features, especially if you play in a live environment or you share stages or you're in a worship team environment. If you hit the panel lock button, you'll see a little lock icon up here in the LCD, and when that's engaged, that means that every single control on here, no matter what we choose, which buttons we hit, none of them will have any response whatsoever. We can change all of our drawbar settings, and everything remains exactly the way we left it when we actually hit the panel lock button again. And when we do, it'll disable that little lock icon will go away, and everything goes back to the exact way we left it. But we can actually even customize that further. If we hit the menu button, go to Control Panel, and then our first choice up here is Panel Lock Settings. If we choose that, we can actually choose which one of the sections of our entire keyboard responds to the panel lock button. Meaning we can only lock certain sections. We can lock just the organ section if we want. We can lock just the live set choices here for our sounds. These are all controllable right through here. We can even lock the master EQ section. And that can be pretty neat when we're playing. If we're using our master EQ maybe to correct a problem that's in the room itself, maybe it has a real peak around, a frequency that we've dialed out, and we want that to remain and not accidentally turn it off while we're playing or switching patches. We can go just to that setting for the master EQ, and we can turn that feature on or off. So the panel lock feature can be customizable, and it's a real lifesaver when you're playing in maybe circumstances where you're either sharing stages or you have a lot of traffic on stage or you're in a worship team environment. This is really a great feature to ensure that everything that you've set and worked hard on stays exactly where it is when you come back. So that's some of my favorite tips and tricks about getting around and using the board live or in a worship team environment that just really enhances the workflow and makes it a lot more fun to use. Hey, if you learned something or if this was helpful in any way, please hit the subscription and notification bells. It really does help keep the channel going. Stay safe, be creative, add something creative to the world. It needs it a lot more than you realize. Take care. We'll catch you guys in the next video.